Hey, look out. It's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
Hey, she's back. If you're watching Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Karen Bejjani, she is the author of The Blue Cord, also founder of ihopeministries.org. She's a North Texan. We got to have Texans on. It's just
Yes,
a part
we
of
do.
the contract. Karen, how are you?
Well, I am great. It is great to be here with you this morning.
It's good to talk
Karen
to you.
is in my hometown of Richardson, Texas. So if you would go say hi to Mom for me, because she would say that I don't call her enough and tell her hi. So if you would do that, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
She does say that over the last, I've known Dan for 17 years. She does say that. And is the statue of Dan still in the circle there, the roundabout, or is
They
that?
tore that down.
I think they tore that down.
Oh, well, that's life. Karen has an incredible story. The book, The Blue Cord, is amazing. I remember talking about this before, about sharing your faith across cultures, which I think is very, very bold, but you break it down and make it, easier. Nothing's really easy. It takes a little challenge, but we can do it. Thanks for your book. Let's catch up with you a bit. It's been out for a while. What response have you heard from the book, and how has it helped people?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Since we last talked, we launched a conference based around the precepts of the book. So we had women fly in from all across the U.S. and some joined us from Canada via live stream. It was the Blue Cord Women's Conference. And really it was about considering we are the generation that hold the keys to the faith of the next. And there are women of lots of other faiths and cultures who live in our cul-de-sacs, or we go to work with them, or they're here as international students, or they're coming as refugees. And they are raising up their kids to follow God as they know him, and they don't know about Jesus, salvation in Jesus. And so we are the generation who have the keys that we can talk with them in kind of unprecedented ways. We don't have to go overseas on a mission trip or become a missionary to go tell them. They're live right among us. And so it really is about raising our awareness that the nations live among us now. And we have the opportunity to go across their cul-de-sacs and strike up a spiritual conversation about matters of the heart. And so many of us, everyday Christians, haven't been thinking about these things, and our churches haven't been talking about them. And so this really is about raising awareness to realize it all starts with our thoughts. If we are not even thinking about this, we're not going to think about sharing our faith across cultures. So that's
Karen,
what's going on.
Tell us, for those who may not have seen when we talked to you before, give us just a little brief history of how you got started I Hope Ministries and the Blue Cord, and your husband, what he lived through and what his passion is for too.
Yeah, so my husband grew up at war with people of other faiths, Muslims really, in the Middle East and North Africa. He lived all throughout the Middle East and North Africa. He was a Christian living in those areas, and he was persecuted and tortured for his faith. And so when he immigrated to the U.S. as a young teenager, he thought, if God was real, none of that would have happened. And so he walked away from the Lord for almost 20 years. And then the Lord brought him back and said, you're going to serve a God you once denied. That's me, loving the people, Muslims, that you once hated. Now, while my husband was growing up at war with Muslims in the Middle East and North Africa, I grew up on America's heartland in the farm fields of Missouri, and I didn't even know that Muslims existed. In fact, when I was growing up, the U.S. was 93% Christian, identified as Christian at that time. And so people of other faiths and cultures, we gave money to missionaries who went overseas to share their faith. And it wasn't anything that I ever imagined doing. And so, but God, he leads us down a path to open our eyes and draw him closer to him. So one day my husband took me back to the Middle East on a trip, and I was kind of going good church girl, doing all the right things, checking all the boxes, doing all the Bible studies. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to tell them about Jesus, or certainly learn and grow. And when I got there, and I saw all of the men and wearing what looked like robes, and the call to prayer would sound out, I was overwhelmed with fear.
Wow.
And in that moment of just having an absolute meltdown of fear, worried all about myself, we met a woman missionary who lived and worked right in the heart of what you would call kind of ISIS territory at the time. So he took me in a really radical place. And when we went to visit with her, I was in full scale meltdown. She was handing me tissues and coffee, and I was saying to her, how can you live here? This is such a dark and dangerous place. You're a single woman Christian missionary in this place. Why do you stay? And she said, I'll never forget. She said to me, Karen, Jesus is worth it all. And in that moment, it really caused me to confront my own faith and consider, I was afraid to share my faith in America, and she was sharing her faith with terrorists every day. And in that moment, she taught me that persecution is a gift, because it means that you are kind of right on the cusp of sharing. Jesus faced opposition too. So it really set me on a journey, a long-term journey, to think people in the United States just don't share their faith like that, especially with people of other faiths. I had never considered it. And so that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Wow.
And even as I share that with you, I probably sound like, wow, who is she? I could never do what she does. But I tell you, I'm a small town kid from the Midwest who never imagined sharing my faith with anyone, let alone someone of another faith or culture. And so what I found is that if I can do this, anybody, any believer can do this too.
Karen Bejjani, the Blue Cord, and also she's ihopeministries.org. What a great story. Wow. Sometime we'll have to get you and your husband on the show.
Yeah.
Would love to talk to him. I think I would be crying too. I would be, I would need coffee and tissues as well.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, here we are in the U.S. Now let's talk about where here in the U.S. we've got, our counties here. In fact, in Gwinnett, we used to live in Gwinnett. Now we live in another town, but it's so multicultural. And so to reach out, it is intimidating, because somebody across the street is Muslim. Somebody down the street maybe raised in a Jewish home. Right. And so there are those things you're like going in your mind, okay, well, where do I begin? Where do we begin, Karen? We want them to read the book, obviously, but where do we begin right now?
Yeah, I mentioned my friend Norma, who I had the full-scale meltdown with in the Middle East. She came to speak at this Blue Cord conference, and it was such a stunning moment, because she did not realize the impact that she had on me and how that changed the trajectory of my own faith journey. And so I won't ever forget one of the things she said at this conference, and it's in the book too, but it's one of the first things that we believers need to consider is oftentimes we're hunkered down, worried about offending someone of another faith or culture, an immigrant, a refugee, an international student. We hold back and hide what we believe, thinking we'll look for the right time, or we just even don't know how to even strike up a conversation to even go there. But what I've come to realize through the years is that people of other faiths and cultures who live in the United States, they expect and assume that we are Christians. They think America is a Christian nation, which now we know that only 6% of Americans have a biblical worldview. But they believe that Hollywood is Christian. And so they don't know what Christians believe. And they expect that if your faith is important to you, you would bring it up.
Wow.
So I've since meant many people of other faiths and cultures. So when I'll just say right up front, as early in that relationship or in the conversation as it makes sense. And I'll say something like, hey, by the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, but I'm a follower of Jesus. And here's what that means. It just means what God says in the Holy Bible in Romans 10:9, that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. So tell me about you. And if they lean into me and they go, oh, wow, I never knew that. I didn't know what Christians believe, or I kind of assumed you might be Christian, but I didn't know for sure. I'm Muslim, or I'm Hindu, or I'm Buddhist. At that point, it opens up all kinds of conversations. If that person is what I might call a person of peace, someone God is wooing to himself, they'll stick with me and they'll continue to have more conversations. And it's just laid that groundwork that says they know right away that when they're engaging with me and we're building a relationship together, they know who I am and what I believe. And that's one of the things that Norma talked about. Even now, she is engaging with many refugees from other faiths and cultures over in the other part of the world. And that's one of the very first things she does right away is identify herself as a Jesus follower. And I think that's something that we can all do. And sometimes, especially in our culture today, we want to hide our faith. There's a lot of opposition to Christianity right now. And it really causes us as believers to pause and say, are we fearing God more than man?
Yeah.
We're called to identify ourselves as Jesus followers.
Wow, she just wrapped me on the knuckles with a ruler there, Dan.
Yep. Yeah, I felt it too.
Well, she did it first to me. Now I'm just paying it forward.
Hey, hey, but thanks for being bold enough to do that. Because we all need a little wrapping to just kind of open our eyes, don't we? Karen Bejjani, the Blue Cord, iHopeMinistries.org. Karen, we'd love to have you back, and whether we can get your husband on or not, we'd love to have you back and talk more, maybe in the fall, if that's good for you.
That'd be great.
Real quick, are you working on anything else for the fall 2023?
Yeah, right now there is a brand new 7-week women's discipleship study based on the Blue Cord. And so there are a whole host of women now who are taking their friends on this journey to realize that we've not been thinking about sharing our faith with people of other faiths and cultures. And so it really is about thinking about our thinking and adjusting our actions. And so I just invite your listeners to plug in at thebluecord.org as we launch those new resources in the fall. This is an especially great study for women's ministries.
Hey, Karen also has a podcast, the Blue Cord Podcast. Check that out. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.